share your name, tell my viewers who we sitting here building, where we got off into a discussion. But go ahead. You don't need an introduction, but welcome to Gully
And
TV.
I don't do well with introductions. Just your brother, Dr. Wesley Muhammad, striving to be a helper of the Honorable Brother Minister Farrakhan. Man, I'm honored to be on the platform, a powerful platform, Gully TV. I don't take the invitation lightly. Opening, availing to your brother, your righteous audience, man. I don't take that lightly. I appreciate it, and inshallah, we won't in any way be abusive or negligent to the minds of your great audience.
Without a doubt. Dr. Wesley, I sat and listened to a couple of platforms that you were speaking on, and you have an agenda where you feel that the black man is being targeted through the marijuana, which is a very, very popular drug in the community. They legalizing it, they making it more accessible, they calling it medicine. At which point did you feel that enough was enough, you had to share and enlighten the community on,
Yes.
what you came up with?
I discovered the pot plot, if you will, while researching and going deeper and deeper down the rabbit hole of a larger plot that we are documenting, which I describe as the testosterone conspiracy and the estrogen assault. I discovered that the U.S. government entered into this testosterone conspiracy and estrogen assault, beginning with the Nixon administration. And as a result of the 1,000 so-called riots that took place during the 60s, when we are taught about black resistance in the 60s, we're taught about the civil rights movement. We believe that the changes that we live in or benefit from today are the result of the nonviolent agitations of Dr. Martin Luther King and the civil rights movement. But that actually is not the case. What forced the government to act is there were 1,000 violent uprisings through the course of the 60s, in the course of a decade. And the straws that broke the camel's back from the government's perspective was Watts, 65, and Detroit, 1967. Those eruptions caused the government to say no more. They studied what the causes were, and they determined, this is outside the Kerner Commission's report. The first Kerner Commission's report was rejected, was violently rejected because it was candid. The later published Kerner Commission report is very watered down. But what the government determined was the problem, what they were willing to concede was the problem. Not that economic oppression caused those eruptions, not political disenfranchisement caused those eruptions. They said the problem of riots in the inner city was a problem of black masculine hostility.
Okay.
Black masculine hostility is the problem. And the source of this problem, black masculine hostility, is a mental condition. So black masculinity in the inner cities were not only criminalized, they were pathologized. Black masculinity is now a mental disease. And so when the government determined that black masculinity was the medical problem, they decided to medicate the problem, to chemically neutralize black masculinity in the inner city. And if black masculinity is the medical problem, is the diseased state, black male femininity became the healthy state from this government's perspective for black men in the inner city. So medicating black masculinity in the inner city has been this government's charge since the Nixon administration. They've tried several drugs, or they deployed, conscripted several drugs into their scientific assault on black masculinity in the inner city. When we say black masculinity, what are we talking about? We're talking about testosterone. We're talking about the biochemistry of masculinity, the right amount of testosterone and the right amount of estrogen. Femininity is the right amount of estrogen with the right amount of testosterone. That's the basis, that's the biochemical definition of masculinity and femininity. Masculinity is testosterone in proper ratio to estrogen. More testosterone, less estrogen. Femininity is the right amount, the right ratio, more estrogen, minimal testosterone. By switching that up in men, by biochemically producing a male with depleted testosterone and elevated estrogen, you are neutralizing that masculinity in the male. And so that's the testosterone conspiracy and the estrogen assault. The plot I discovered came up out of that larger testosterone conspiracy and estrogen assault, where the government tried or used many chemicals to deplete black male testosterone, elevate black male estrogen. They used DepoProvera, the female contraceptive, female birth control. That female birth control causes gender inversion. It feminizes males. Mm-hmm. And the government used DepoProvera. They shot black boys up in alternative high schools in the cities when they got out of control in class. And the white teacher, or when the white teacher did not want to deal with the black male, they would send them to the office, and the nurse will inject black boys with DepoProvera, the female contraceptive, because DepoProvera, before it was a female contraceptive, a female birth control, it was used in a laboratory to induce homosexuality, to induce transgenderism in organisms. And this is what government-run schools were injecting black boys with. So DepoProvera was one of the drugs to medicate black male hostility in the inner city. And
say the name again, bro.
DepoProvera.
DepoProvera. Got it.
DepoProvera. And marijuana, weaponized weed, was their most successful chemical agent to medicate black masculine hostility of the inner city.
With so estrogen is the enemy. Too much estrogen.
I wouldn't say that. The energy, the enemy is depleted testosterone. See, estrogen isn't the problem, it's the weaponizing of estrogen.
Okay.
It's the problem. So let's be real clear. This is what the weaponized weed does. But let me back up. The testosterone conspiracy and the estrogen assault produced this. This is the overall fruit of this testosterone conspiracy and estrogen assault that has been in operation since the Nixon administration. The fruit is this. The black man globally is the world's Mr. T, Mr. Testosterone. We are naturally endowed with the greatest amount of testosterone on the planet. All of our systems aid in the production. Our very melanated organism, melanated tissues, help make us Mr. T, the male with the highest amount of testosterone on the planet. And understand why that's important. When we hear on the street, most of us, when we hear testosterone, we hear sex hormone. We hear libido hormone. That's not the main characteristic of testosterone. White folks describe testosterone more appropriately, as the power hormone. Why? Because what testosterone does two very important things in this discussion. Testosterone shapes masculinity in the womb. It literally is a scalpel, the chemical scalpel that shapes the physical maleness of a male fetus. It's the testosterone that produces the male genitals for your male or my male fetus. Testosterone chemically sculpts the masculine neurology of the fetus. So testosterone literally scalps. It's a chemical that scalps physical and neurological masculinity and maleness in the womb. You cut off that testosterone in the womb, that's what produces transgenderism. The other thing testosterone does, once we're out of the womb, testosterone is the source of a man's drive for power. Testosterone literally fuels the instinct in males to have power. And we know that a god is a being of power and force. Testosterone is literally that black god hormone. It impels a man. The right amount of testosterone impels a man, compels a man to seek power. That's why inner city black men were turning up violently in the cities across this nation, turning up against tyranny. That testosterone disallows, the right amount of testosterone disallows a man to suffer under tyranny for so long. Naturally, the testosterone fuels an uprising. So that's why they needed to neutralize testosterone. The black man has a world's highest levels of testosterone. The black man in America used to be the world's Mr. T. But since the Reagan administration, from their effort from that day to this, 3 international studies have been done and found that the black male in America has become the world's Mr. E, Mr. Estrogen. We have the black male in America has the highest levels of estrogen in our blood, higher than any male population on the planet Earth. We went from the world's Mr. T to the world's Mr. E. How does that happen? How do we go from the world's Mr. T to the world's Mr. E? By chemically assaulting the black male's biochemistry, by depleting his testosterone and artificially elevating his estrogen. How do you deplete a man's testosterone, or the black man's testosterone, and elevate his estrogen? By that drink and that dank. By the weed and the alcohol. That combination, our blunt and our Hennessy, that combination of the weed and the alcohol is the 1-2 punch of our masculinity. Because the weed, the THC, this elevated THC that's in the kush or the loud that we smoking now, which is very different from natural cannabis. Natural cannabis, God planted that natural cannabis is medicinal. But the Quran speaks of Satan making mischief with created things. Loud is the result of Satan making mischief with created things. God created the cannabis plant, and then it is good for us when used properly. Satan created is Satan's laboratory. It's a context from which loud and kush come up out of. That elevated THC weed.
Right.
Natural cannabis has a THC content of less than 1%. But can't no one today get lifted with that.
Yeah.
You need a joint or blunt with THC in the levels of 10, 15, 20%. That's what's
30,
average on the street.
30, 40.
And that zombie producing stuff, 30, 40%.
Yeah.
So what God planted can't do nothing for those of us seeking to get high in 2019. What we are getting high with is what Satan produced first in the laboratory. That THC, that elevated THC, cuts off the production of testosterone at its origin in the brain. The production of testosterone begins with the anterior pituitary in the brain. THC cuts off the process at its root. So the elevated THC diminishes testosterone in men. That alcohol that we sipping on while we smoking our blunt.
So Harlem, man. Harlem. I be in Harlem, man. The only thing moving, man. Keeping the game up. 40th. Harlem.